This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear a man telephoning a library to find out about joining. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning, North College Library. How can I help you?
I was wondering if it was possible to join the library.
Are you a student at North College?
No, I'm not, but someone told me it was possible to join even if I wasn't.
That's right, it is. Are you over 18? That's our minimum joining age.
Yes, I am.
That's no problem then.
Could you tell me what I have to do to join?
Well, you'll need to come into the library and fill out some forms. You'll also need to bring 2 passport photos with you. We also need 2 documents for ID, so a driving license would be fine.
I've got that. And what else? A credit card?
No, it needs to have your address on it.
Shall I bring a bank statement? Would that do?
That'll be fine.
Good. Does it cost anything to join?
Well, it's free for students here, but otherwise it's £125 per year, or £25 if you've got a current student card from another college.
I was at Westerly College until last year, but now I've got a job at Jefferson Steel Factory. It's more expensive than I thought. My local library is free.
But you'll find they don't have the range of reference books or facilities which we buy for our students. That's why you have to pay to be an external member.
I see. How many books can I borrow?
We allow 12 items borrowed at any one time if you're a student, and that includes CDs, DVDs and videos. However, it's only 8 items for members of the public.
Fine. And how long can I have them for?
Well, you can have both fiction and reference books for 4 weeks, which isn't bad, really.
And what happens if I return them late?
Like all libraries, there's a fine system in place. The minimum fine is £1.50, but it can be much higher for some items, up to £5 per week. We'll give you a booklet with all the details when you join. You can always renew items, if they're not required by anyone else, by telephoning or logging onto our website.
Before you hear the rest of the telephone call, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
What about the computers? Can I use them free of charge?
For college students it's free, but for external members like yourself, the first hour is free, and then we make a nominal charge of £1 per hour thereafter.
Do I have to book in advance for them?
Oh, yes, it's advisable. Most people tend to book 24 hours in advance, although sometimes you can get one with only 6 hours' notice. However, the earliest you can book a computer is 48 hours before you need it, and you can only book 1 hour at a time. If no one else has booked the computer out, then you may be able to have another hour if you want. We have a wide range of databases, so the computers are in great demand.
I'm thinking of doing some writing, and I might need to access national newspapers. Do you have them on these databases?
We do indeed. We've got all the big nationals, The Guardian and The Observer, The Independent, and The Times and Sunday Times. We've also got all the local papers and a wide selection of magazines.
Excellent. I assume you have photocopying facilities?
Of course. 5p a sheet for both A4 and A3 black and white copies, and 40p a sheet for colour. You can get a card from the counter here. It doesn't take coins.
Okay. Oh, by the way, another thing I was wondering about was if you ran any writing classes through the library.
We do, but you'll have to speak to John Grantingham about that. He's our resident author. He runs the creative writing classes.
John Grant... could you spell that for me, please?
Certainly. Grantingham.
Are the classes here at the library?
Yes, he's here on Thursday evenings. Oh, no, sorry, Friday. He's just changed it. You can contact him by emailing the library.
Okay. Right. Well, that's about all I need to know. Thank you. I'll be along later this week to join. Thanks. Bye.
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2.
You will hear a man called Dan Pearman talking on the radio about Pedal Power, a UK charity which sends bicycles to people in developing countries. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
My name's Dan Pearman, and I'd like to talk about the work of Pedal Power, a small charity based mainly in the UK. I'll be giving our contact details at the end, if anyone would like to find out more about how to support us. But first, how the charity began. I got the idea of exporting bicycles to developing countries while I was in Ecuador. I went there in 1993, just after graduating from university. After 3 years of studying, I wanted adventure. I loved travelling, so I decided to join a voluntary organisation and was sent to Ecuador to carry out land surveys. The project came to an end after 5 years, and when I returned to the UK in 1998, I started planning Pedal Power. Where I lived in Ecuador was a very rural area. My neighbour had the only bicycle in the village, whereas everyone else walked everywhere. My neighbour's business was unusually successful, and for years I couldn't understand why. Then I realised having a bike meant he could get where he wanted to go without much trouble. Other local carpenters could only accept jobs in a 3-kilometre radius, so no matter how skilled they were they could never do as many jobs as my neighbour. At Pedal Power, we collect second-hand bikes in the UK and send them to some of the poorest regions in the world. When we distribute bikes overseas, we don't give them away for free. We'd like to, but long-term that doesn't really help the local economy. The demand for bikes is enormous, which makes them very expensive locally. So we sell them for 5% of the normal price. But in order to continue operating, we need to have a constant supply of bikes which we send out every 6 months. One example of a town that's received bicycles from Pedal Power is Rivas. It was the first place I sent a full container of bicycles to. Most people there now own a bicycle. The local economy has developed so much you wouldn't recognize it as the same place. In fact, there are more bikes than on the streets of Amsterdam, if you've ever been there. But Pedal Power still needs your help. You may have read about some of our recent problems in the British media. In August 2000, we simply ran out of money. We had containers of bikes ready to send, but no money to pay the bills. It was a terrible situation. We managed to ensure the bikes went out on time, but the other problems carried on for several months.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Fortunately, in October 2001, we won an Enterprise Award, which helped us enormously. We invested 15 of the £75,000 prize money to help secure our future. Winning the award helped raise our profile, and the money enabled us to pay all our shipping costs, which represent our greatest expense. Pedal Power changes lives. When someone gets a bicycle from us, they see a 14% increase in their income. We're currently looking to invest in computers so that our office staff can do an even better job. Because of our work, people in a number of countries now have a better standard of living. So far, we've provided 46,000 people with bikes. But we'd like to send more, at least 50,000 by the end of the year. Now, there are many ways in which you can support the work of Pedal Power, not just by taking a bike to a collection in your area. I should also like to say, if you do have a bike to donate, it doesn't matter what condition it's in. If we can't repair it, we'll strip it down for spare parts. Of course, to do that we always need tools, which are expensive to buy, so we welcome any that you can give. Also, you could help by contacting the voluntary staff at our offices. They'll be able to suggest activities you could organise to bring in funds for us. People do all kinds of things, including, of course, sponsored bike rides. Also, we're always interested to hear of other places that would benefit from receiving a consignment of bikes, and welcome suggestions from people who've been to developing regions on their travels. We hope that by talking on radio programmes like this, we will be able to raise public awareness, which will lead to government organisations also giving us regular financial support, something that we really need. If you'd like some more information about where to donate an old bicycle or offer help in other ways, please contact us on 019.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3.
You are going to hear Bob asking 2 other students some questions for a survey. First, listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25. You now have some time to read questions 21 to 25.
Hi guys, I'm Bob. Have you got a few minutes?
Sure, but what's up?
Nothing much, but I've got to do a survey for my sociology class. It'd be great if you could help me out. You're students here, aren't you? Seen you around campus.
Yeah, economics majors. I'm Jed.
I'm Sue.
And I'm Anne.
Hi. Economics. I haven't made my mind up yet. It's a toss-up between sociology and environmental studies. Resource management, sustainable development, that sort of thing.
Sure, but I have a class in 10 minutes. How long will it take?
Well, if I start with you, I should be able to get the info I need in 5 minutes or so.
Okay. What do you want to know? Names and stuff.
Anonymous is okay. I just need your major, economics, and what year you are.
We're all sophomores. The fun year.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, the first thing I want to know... By the way, these are open-ended questions. You can say as much or as little as you want.
Okay, fire away.
Right. What do you think is the single most important problem facing the world today?
I reckon it's global warming, not terrorism. I've been taking this environmental economics class, and it's really...
Come on, Sue. I've told you. This climate change stuff is all a big scare cooked up by environmental groups who care more about pandas than people. So subjective.
As the conversation continues, please answer questions 26 to 30. You now have some time to read questions 26 to 30.
You're like a tape recorder. Why don't you learn what you're talking about?
Okay, guys, argue about it later. I just want to ask Sue a couple more questions so she can get to her class. What makes you think this, Sue?
Well, if you read about, just check on the internet. There's tons of information. But just look at the effects of rising temperatures on agriculture. For every degree rise in temperature above 30 degrees, there's something like a 10% drop in crop yields.
So that's your main reason for...
It's one of them. Sea levels could rise a meter or more by the end of the century. Think what that will mean for the billions of people who live in low-lying areas. And thousands of species could go extinct because they couldn't adapt quickly enough.
I told you she cares more about pandas than people.
Jed, she mentioned all those billions of people in low places. And don't forget all the farmland that will be ruined by saltwater intrusion. You know, replacing fresh underground water.
I've got to go. Why don't you see what Bob has to say? All he worries about is stock market trends. But we love you, Jed. Must go. See you.
Thanks. See you. So what's your major worry, Jed?
Sue kind of said it. It's a global economic slowdown, so people won't have jobs.
And what jobs will they have if food production drops like it could?
Maybe we should do this another time. Bye, guys.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk about Oxford and Cambridge universities. You now have some time to read questions 31 to 40.
Good evening, fellow members of the New York Memory Club. Tonight I'm going to talk about those two famous English universities, Oxford and Cambridge. Let's see who wins tonight's big memory prize, which is a barrel of real English beer. OK, here I go. Oxford is the oldest English-speaking university in the world. There is no clear date of when it started, but records show that there was some teaching at Oxford in 1096 AD. And it developed rapidly from 1167, when King Henry II banned English students from attending the University of Paris. In 1188, a historian gave a public lecture to the top Oxford teachers, and in 1190, the first known overseas student arrived. This started the university's tradition of international exchanges. In 1231, the masters, meaning the teachers, were recognised as a universitas, which is Latin for something like a corporation. In the 13th century, conflict between town and gown, meaning ordinary townspeople and students, the students wore gowns, accelerated the establishment of halls of residence like dormitories. This led to the Oxford colleges, of which University, Balliol and Merton colleges, established between 1249 and 1264, are the oldest. Less than a century later, Oxford was the most famous centre of learning in the world. It soon became a centre for religious and political disputes. John Wycliffe, a 14th century master of Balliol College, campaigned for a Bible in common English. The pro-Latin leaders of the Catholic Church in Rome were very angry over this, and even more angry when, in 1530, King Henry VIII forced Oxford University to accept his divorce from Catherine of Aragon. In the late 17th century, the Oxford philosopher John Locke, suspected of treason, was forced to leave England. The 18th century was an age of scientific discovery and religious revival. For example, a geometry professor at Oxford, Edmund Halley, successfully predicted the return of the comet that was named after him. I don't have enough time to tell you much more about Oxford University, but I must tell you that from 1878, academic halls were established for women. Since 1974, only one of Oxford's 39 colleges has not accepted both men and women. St Hilda's College remains the only women's college. Now for a few numbers. The University of Oxford has over 17,000 students. A quarter of these students are from outside the UK, 5% from Asia, 8% from North America, 10% from other European countries, and a few from elsewhere. Oxford University currently has students from more than 130 countries. Over 5,600 students are engaged in postgraduate work. Of these, around 3,000 are working in the arts and humanities. Going back to the colleges, of which there are 39, there are also 7 permanent private halls, which were founded by different Christian denominations, and which still retain their religious character. 30 colleges and all 7 halls admit students for both undergraduate and graduate degrees. 7 other colleges are for graduates only. 1, All Souls, has fellows only, and 1, Kellogg College, specialises in part-time graduate and continuing education. OK, that's enough for Oxford. Now I'll tell you something about Cambridge University. The town itself has its origins in the 1st century BC, when an Iron Age tribe established a settlement on Castle Hill. Later, the Romans took over this site, which was an important strategic point, and was the meeting point of several important Roman roads. Over 1,000 years later, the Normans from France built a castle here. All that remains of this castle nowadays is the small hill that was inside the castle walls. In the 12th century, students attended schools attached to the monasteries and cathedrals, and as universities developed in Italy and France, scholars moved from one centre to another. Some went from Paris to Oxford, and later, in the 13th century, groups arrived in Cambridge. By the middle of the 12th century, there were enough students there for the town to be officially recognised as a seat of learning. In fact, in 1231, King Henry III wrote out orders on how academic life in the town was to be managed. At this time, students had to make their own arrangements for living accommodation. Because it was difficult to find a decent place to live, hostels, like simple small hotels, were set up for them. and from these the college system evolved. The first college was Peterhouse, founded by a bishop, the Bishop of Ely. Just like in Oxford, as the university grew and took over more of the town, there were outbreaks of trouble between town and gown. Well, my time is nearly up, so I'll fast forward to the late 1800s, when two colleges were founded for women, but it was not until the late 1940s that they were awarded degrees. A third women's college was founded in the 1950s, but it was not until the 1970s that other colleges began to accept female students.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.